Well, good morning. This is Ian R. Crane, and it's the morning of Sunday, 16th of June, 2019. Now, it's very unusual for me to be doing a Sunday morning broadcast, and even more unusual for me to be doing it at shortly after 8 o'clock. Normally, of course, 8:30. But this is an extremely important update. Now, on Friday, John Smith of the Common Law Courts had driven down to London to challenge the legitimacy of the statute law courts by bringing the annulment of Lyn Thyer's extradition, which had been achieved following holding a common law court. Now, that common law court not only ruled that Lyn's extradition should be annulled, it also ruled that David and Lyn should have all charges against them rescinded, and that their assets should be returned to them, and the corrupt Judge Michael Supperstone be removed from office forthwith. Now, obviously, for a lot of people, they say, oh, there's nothing you can do here. Well, you would be very wrong. Because on Friday, John Smith brought his unique tenacity to the Royal Courts of Justice, and having meetings with multiple people at the courts through the day, eventually got both the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court to acknowledge that the documentation that he had submitted was indeed legitimate. Now, of course, no statute court wants to admit that it is effectively subordinate to common law. So instead of kicking the can up the hill, they kick the can down the hill. So they have referred John back to Westminster Magistrates Courts, where my namesake, it would seem, Judge Rebecca Crane, actually made the initial ruling that Lyn Thyer should be extradited to France, despite not having any charges brought against her in the UK, but she should be extradited to France to face charges pretty much identical to those levied against David Noakes here in the UK. So, John then drove back to Scotland on Friday evening, and he will be back in London tomorrow at Westminster Magistrates Court, where he has a confirmed hearing in Court 3 at 10 a.m. So if there is any possibility of you getting along to Westminster Magistrates Courts for 9:30, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning to witness history in the making, because obviously the statute courts have got away with their fraud for some 350 plus years. Now, obviously, they're not going to roll over and go, oh dear, what a shame, we've been found out. They're going to do everything they possibly can to maintain the fraud. But they're not reckoning on somebody with the depth and breadth of knowledge and the tenacity of John Smith. So John is not giving up on this for 1 second, and he will push and keep challenging and establish the legitimacy of common law, and he will get the extradition of Lyn Thyer overturned. So, where are the Westminster Magistrates Courts? Well, they're at 181 Marylebone Road, so please don't go to Westminster Tube Station, because you'd be actually over the wrong side of the Circle Line. So it's 181 Marylebone Road, which is London Northwest 1, that's NW1 5BR. Now, the nearest stations are Marylebone, which is served by the Bakerloo line, and of course mainline trains, Chiltern trains, I think it is, coming into Marylebone Station, or on the Circle and District lines, Edgware Road. It's about equidistant from the Magistrates Court. So if you're able to join John and support John, then meet outside Westminster Magistrates Court at 9:30 tomorrow morning, and get the opportunity to witness firsthand history in the making. Now, there's so much else going on at the moment, and I will cover those issues tomorrow morning at 8:30. And not least, obviously, we'll be looking at the most likely culprit for the attacks on the tankers in the Gulf, and looking at quite a remarkable revelation surrounding the leadership contest, such as it is, of the Tory party. And you won't be at all surprised, of course, to learn that this is total theatre, and it doesn't really matter who actually gets into the role, because the script is already set, and once they get into office, they are simply going to have to follow the script. And, just like previous prime ministers, it's only when they get into number 10 they actually realise how little autonomy they actually have. Okay, well, that's the short broadcast this morning. The most important thing here is really, this is truly history in the making. John had a full-on day on Friday. It became very apparent that the courts did not know how to deal with him. And when they realised that everything that he was submitting was indeed legitimate, and accepted those court documents and pushed it back to Westminster Magistrates Court. So let's see what unfolds on Monday morning. Because once this challenge to statute law has been successful and the fraud of the statute courts exposed, then it opens up the floodgates. And there are so many other issues that the common law courts can address and establish the supremacy of their ruling, the common law court ruling, the court of the people, over statute law, which of course is established for and on behalf of the corporatocracy. So that's this unusual Sunday morning broadcast, but I think you'll agree that it really was important to get this message out so that we can get as many people as possible to Westminster Magistrates Courts tomorrow morning at 9:30. And please, if you can help by sharing this short YouTube, put it around on social media, that would be amazing. Thanks for joining me this morning. You enjoy the rest of your weekend, and John Smith flying down later today, down to London, to be at the courts for 9:30 tomorrow morning. You have a great day, and I'll catch you tomorrow morning at 8:30. You take care now.